Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate you taking the time out to spend time with us this morning. My name's Lucy Hutton. I am Head of Partnerships at Fusion Education People Solutions. One of the people and the partners that we've been speaking to are the Ministry of Ecoeducation. And we're joined today by Paul Turner from the Ministry of Eco, who will be delivering this session. So just a little brief introduction before we move on to Paul about Fusion Education People Solutions, because I know some of you are known to us, but not everybody is. So just a little bit of a brief intro. So we are HR service and software providers specifically for education, and we work right across the UK. We have a full HR qualified team, and we support you from everything to do with HR and legal through to wellbeing support, through to data protection, training, and everything in between. We've developed along the way in the last 10 years of Fusion some lovely HR software products as well. One of them is an absence management module, and the other is a SAM People module, which is a SAM People system, which is a full HR system for schools and trusts, and also FaceEd, an applicant tracking system. So that's just a little bit about us and what we do. One of the key things we also do is we work with the Department for Education, and we're a network leader for the Lead School Managers Group. I know we have got some people from the forum on today, so thanks for joining us. And look out, please, for the National Association of Multi-Academy Trusts, which we'll be launching in the next few weeks, which again is a national forum purely for multi-academy trust central teams and schools. So that's a little bit about us and what we do. So here's our company kind of diagram, really, just to explain how the services and software link together. So part of my role is to work with different partners in the education sector and find connections and things where we have elements in common. One of the members of our team that's very much into eco and sustainability, and we're working ourselves on our carbon neutral plans and everything that go as part of that, all the legwork that goes with that. One of our team put me in touch with Paul and the Ministry of Eco and the work that they're doing. And what we just really wanted to do was provide a platform to share that information, because we've got the infrastructure to do that. So I just want to introduce you now to Paul, who's going to be talking through everything that they're about and what, how you can be part of that movement, if you like, to give yourself that background, that context, and then to decide if actually, is this something that's for you, or it might be something that your schools can do as a network or as a trust or as a local authority, and look at something like that together, which would be absolutely amazing. So we're really pleased to be supporting the ministry today, and I'm going to hand over to Paul, who will be talking through everything Ministry of Eco and what's happening and what's coming next. So over to you, Paul. Thank you so much.
Cheers, Lucy. So yeah, hi, I'm Paul. I am a teacher. I am the education lead at the Ministry of Ecoeducation, and I'm going to take you on a bit of a journey. First of all, I want to start you off with some of the background knowledge and the important things that you need to know about the climate and nature emergency, which should also give you a flavour of the ethos and the approach in terms of the way that we are kind of bringing this education forward. And then I will go into a bit more detail about the curriculum and the resources and what we've done and who we're working with and all those sorts of things. But before I do that, I do want to just also thank you, Lucy, again, for helping to organise this and to bringing everyone together. And then I'm just going to also give you a bit of context in terms of who we are. So this project is funded by the Green Britain Foundation, which is the charitable arm of Ecotricity, which is founded by this man, Dale Vince. Ecotricity is a renewable energy provider, which is obviously having a very interesting time at the moment in terms of everything that's going on. Dale, though, is involved in a whole load of environmental projects. He is involved in Sea Shepherd, which people might have heard of, which looks at the conservation and management of marine environments. He also is owner of Forest Green Rovers, which is the most sustainable football club in the world. And the Forest Green Rovers and the Football Club and the Community Trust and the English Football League are a really valuable resource that we have been engaging with and involving particularly forestry rovers we can use as an example of lots of the elements of the curriculum. Okay, so I guess also I should mention Dale's book as well. Dale's ethos and approach informs a lot of the way that we're framing the curriculum and the way that we're going about this, particularly in terms of collaboration and trying to live the values that are really at the heart of this as well. And lots of that's illustrated in his book, Manifesto. Okay, so let's get started. Any ideas what is going on here? So in the chat, have a go guessing what you think is going on. Is this photograph real? Where do you think it might have been taken? And whilst you do that, I might just add in, just to give you a bit of a hint. So in the chat, please feel free to suggest what you think is going on here. Have a go. Any ideas? Where might this have been taken? Any ideas? I'll give people a chance. So, yes, we've got one guess here from about maybe the Galapagos. So the Galapagos Islands, maybe, yeah. A zoo, maybe. Is it staged? Linda said maybe has it staged. Well, the reality is this is real. The photograph was taken in a rainforest. And the story behind this is that sodium salt is a really rare resource. And so often if you get a really thirsty butterfly, they might end up drinking the salty tears of a friendly turtle. So we've got a butterfly here drinking the tears of a turtle. Now, the reason to start with this is just to show and remind ourselves about the awe and wonder of nature. And that's a really important place to start. And it's a foundation for what we have created, is to really flip the relationship in terms of thinking about humans and the rest of nature, and using that to underpin a lot of the framing and the language that we use in the curriculum. Okay, I'm going to take this in another direction as well. Now, you might have near you a piece of A4 paper. We're going to just start with this piece of A4 paper. Now, how many times do you think I can fold this piece of paper before I can't fold it anymore? How many times can you fold a piece of paper? So I've got, what's that, 3? Have a guess. How many times do you think I can fold this piece of A4 paper? Okay, Lucy's put 7. We've got, Steve's got 8. Yeah, there is a physical limit, and it's because every time you fold it, you double the thickness, and eventually it gets to a point where it's just too thick to bend. Now, the world record is about 12 folds with a really big flat piece of paper, but about 7, maybe 8 is the limit with a piece of A4 paper. Now, imagine if you could keep folding this and there was no limit. Imagine if we could keep doubling its thickness. Now, how many times do you think I would need to fold this piece of paper before it became the thickness of the earth? So have a guess, how many folds to make this piece of paper as thick as the earth? If we could keep folding it and there was no limit. Have a guess, any ideas? Whilst you're guessing, this, some of these elements are part of something called the Aim High Earth Climate and Nature course, and we've incorporated some of this into the curriculum, and this is also something that we offer teachers as well. Now, Linda's put 300, good guess. It would only take 37 folds for this piece of paper to be as thick as the earth, and you can keep going. We could think, how many folds would it take for it to be as thick as the Milky Way? And that would be 83. And then for it to be as thick as the whole observable universe, it would only be 103 folds. Now, you might be there thinking, what has a piece of folding paper got to do with a climate and nature emergency and communicating that? It's because we humans are just not wired to understand how quickly things can grow out of control. And the recent COVID crisis and kind of COVID pandemic is a really good example of that when we talk about the R number. So this piece of paper illustrates exponential growth, and it's a really good tool that you can use with children to get them to think about, actually, the climate crisis is not just a science problem. It's not just about numbers, because we could communicate and tell those numbers until we were blue in the face. What this also is, and what this illustrates, is that the climate crisis is also it's a perception problem too. So we really need to be conscious about the way that we communicate and how people interpret the information. So how we tell stories and how we hang these bits of information into a story and a thread that is really important in terms of bringing people along with us and getting them to actually understand the reality of those numbers. Okay, I am though going to jump a little bit more into some of the science, and hopefully this is kind of interesting and new to you. So I'll just load up here. Now, this is the Earth. I won't ask you, but you might know there are 7.8 billion people who live on Earth, and that number is increasing. Now, we are very, very fortunate to live on the Earth. It is a very special place. Now, when I go into schools, I often ask children, what is it that's special about the Earth? What means it is the only place that we know of where life exists? And the really important thing is the atmosphere. So the Earth has an atmosphere which keeps the planet at a habitable temperature. It is a temperature that living things are happy and comfortable. And the Earth at the moment has an average temperature of about 15 degrees Celsius. And the reason that exists is because we have the sun, which is a ball of gas releasing energy out into space. Now, some of that energy passes through space and reaches the Earth. Some is reflected off the atmosphere, some passes through the atmosphere, some is reflected off the Earth, some is absorbed by the Earth, and then some is re-emitted. Now, that layer of the atmosphere is made up of greenhouse gases, and those greenhouse gases act like a blanket, and it's a bit like wearing a shirt or a jumper. You know, it keeps us at a comfortable temperature, and that is called the greenhouse effect, and it is completely natural and good. Now, humans though have come along and they have put another blanket on. You know, it's a bit like wearing another jumper or putting on another blanket. We have increased the proportion of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. We've added carbon dioxide mainly through burning fossil fuels, burning wood, oil, coal, natural gas. And that has made the blanket thicker and increased the temperature. So it's increased the amount of carbon dioxide and increased the temperature. And we can actually see that here with this. This is from Ed Hawkins at the University of Reading, and it's called the warming stripes. And each of these vertical lines is a different year, and it shows from 1850 to the present day how the average temperature of the Earth has fluctuated and changed. We've got the darker blues, which are colder, and then the warmer the years, which are darker red. So this is a really good visualization, and it helps young people to understand how the warming has happened and how rapid it is. So it's that rate of change which is really, really important. And we can then kind of match that alongside carbon dioxide. So here you can see the carbon dioxide concentration over the last 800,000 years. And you can see where we are now. We are up here at around about 419, and we call it parts per million. So if you took 1 million molecules in the sky, 419 of those would be carbon dioxide. And it sounds like a very small amount, but you only need a very small amount to have a really big impact. What's really interesting here is that you can see how in the past, the carbon dioxide concentrations have fluctuated. They've always changed. The climate that we've experienced has always changed. But what is so significant is the rate of change. It's how quickly the carbon dioxide concentrations have increased, and it's almost vertical when you look at it in this scale. And what we can do though is we can sort of zoom in a bit more, and we can look over the last maybe 160, 200 years, and you can see how the carbon dioxide concentrations are increasing. And you can see where we are now. And this is a really important part of the story to tell, is to give students the context of how the climate and temperature and carbon dioxide concentrations have changed in the past. Now, that's the kind of science picture. I just also then want to just give a context in terms of kind of the current situation and almost give a bit of the story of why we decided to create this curriculum. And this is part of research that Teach the Future carried out. So Teach the Future are a student-led organisation who are campaigning for climate education. And some of the research that they found is that the majority of teachers, or 92%, are concerned about climate change, and they agree that we should be doing more about it. But what they highlight is just the lack of education around sustainability and climate change that exists within the current system. So at the moment, it might often be isolated to certain subjects, and it might be that it's science, or it might be that it's geography, that traditionally have been seen as the subjects where this kind of knowledge sits. And what's really interesting is we've explored what is currently taught, and often it is very much kind of science driven, numbers driven, and there's a lack of engagement in terms of those bigger, broader questions around what direction society should take and the impacts on humans. And teachers are very comfortable on falling back on the kind of very the kind of science, which they perceive to be quite rigid, rather than engaging in those broader questions. Now, this is just a summary then in terms of the students. So yeah, a very small number of students feel that they know enough about climate change. Much more students want to engage in the environment, and there's about 70% of teachers though that feel that they're not supported. And this is all part of the story to say this is why we decided to create this. Our research, our engagement with students and teachers follows a similar path in saying that there's a real appetite for this, both from students and teachers. But there's a sense that teachers feel like they've got so many pressures already that they might not have the necessary knowledge or time to be able to find it out themselves. So we then decided to come along and help in that process. So we started our journey here over near Stroud, and this is a school that Ecotricity have traditionally had links with. And it was a conversation between Dale and Nick, the head teacher at the school, where Nick was saying, look, we have the desire to do more around this. We want to really engage our young students in terms of environmental action and do more as a school community. So they had some ideas, and about a year ago, I spent quite a few days with them, kind of following the school, observing what was going on and talking to the staff and students. And through that, we took the seeds of a curriculum. We kind of picked up the initial ideas that they as a school community had kind of initiated and developed themselves. And what we then decided to do was to grow that, bring in more teachers, spread it nationally, and put resource and time and energy to create a more holistic curriculum. And so off the back of working with Minchinhampton Academy, with this primary school over near Stroud, we then set up the Ministry of Ecoeducation, and we describe it as a collaboration of teachers working together to place sustainability at the heart of education. Now, the reason to say the heart of education is because this is all about placing this within the curriculum. And so it's putting it at the center of every single lesson for every pupil. Because one of the things that we also observed was that often the environmental initiatives are pushed to the edge of the school, both in terms of time and space. So it might be a small pocket of the school where there is a garden or a gardening club, or there is a teacher who looks after a space. It might also be that in the curriculum, it's at lunchtime or after school that there are certain groups of students who do this. But what we are saying is that this needs to be every pupil in every lesson. And so the idea is the resources that we've created help that happen. It helps people to do more of this throughout the day. This element of collaboration, though, as well, is not us saying we know the answers and this is just what you have to do, because what we are keen to do is to amplify and share the best practice that is happening already around the country. So we have started with 15 schools, and part of the reason we started with those 15 schools is because there are educators in those settings who are real champions for environmental education, and they're already doing great things. And what we wanted to do is to connect what they're doing with other people around the country and share this best practice. And that is actually one of the reasons why we've then gone into those settings and recorded lots of video content to help show what is happening in lots of these kind of environments already. What we have also done then is, in order to make this happen right now, we have rearranged the national curriculum. So everything that we've created is mapped against the national curriculum and links with English, maths, science, but also all the other subjects that are expected at the primary level. And it allows teachers to explore the environment, so explore the world through an environmental lens, whilst also teaching and achieving all of these elements of the national curriculum. And what that means is these resources are ready to use right now. We don't need to wait for any kind of government change from the top down. This is something that schools are doing now and more can get on board with. And one of the key ways that we've also done this is we have brought together lots of the resources that already exist. Because the other thing that we wanted to appreciate is that there isn't a need to design a new complete curriculum and design new lessons. They already exist, but one of the problems is that they're peppered across the internet on the websites of lots of different charities and organizations, and it takes time and a certain level of kind of initiative for teachers to go and actively find those themselves. So one of the activities we did at the very beginning was to trawl the internet and to bring together we've got one big database of more than 160 different organizations and charities and all of their environmental resources that are freely available on the internet. And what we then did is we weaved those together into this holistic curriculum. So we have, and I'll show you a bit more in a second, but we have inquiry questions that frame a series of lessons, and in that series of lessons the teacher jumps between the resources from lots of different organizations. What I will also just point out as well is that we wanted to make sure that this curriculum had a really fundamental foundation. So it had a theory, it had an academic foundation to it. And so one of the initial processes as well was to create a kind of holistic report which summarised the current situation of environmental education in the UK, and then also just to pick out highlights for us to then map what our curriculum wanted to achieve and how it was sort of underpinned. And so there's 4 key elements. There's the process of inquiry and the idea that it's guided by asking questions, and those questions form the foundation for the lessons and individual lessons themselves as well. There's a sense of adventure as well, and that's adventure of the everyday. It's that kind of micro adventure that was spearheaded by Alistair Humphreys, and the idea that we can make every single lesson adventurous in terms of the approach and the kind of mindset of young people. So it's not necessarily about going and camping in wild places, it's about their approach within the everyday and making everyday adventurous. What we also then, the third one, was to reframe that idea of the relationship between humans and nature, and to focus on having this balance. And so the language that we use is all about thinking about nature and humans as a part of nature, rather than nature as a resource that can be exploited, and less of this idea of othering nature and thinking about it as something as separate, but instead understanding that humans are a fundamental part of nature. And that leads on to this idea of systems thinking and showing how the world is connected. And that comes both in the way that the curriculum is constructed. So this idea that there is this broad question that brings together lots of different traditional subjects. So within one topic, students will do elements of maths, English, science, history, geography, language, that there is the element of drama and music as well throughout this, that then helps students to connect and understand how those things are linked, but also just in terms of the way that the knowledge is presented as well, that the knowledge is not presented in this very siloed traditional subject sense, but it's connected through these real world issues. And I just wanted to then say as well, just in terms of our journey, so we started back in 2021 with Minchinhampton, with Nick Moss, and then we, over the last year, recruited about 15 what we call pioneer schools. And those schools have been really kind of influential in helping develop and trial the curriculum, and they're from a complete variety of settings. They stretch all the way from Durham down to Plymouth. There's a real variety in terms of types of schools, both urban and rural, quite wealthy settings, but also ones in more deprived areas, schools with varying levels of free school meals. There's also some interesting schools in the mix as well that are not the kind of traditional sense of schools that are looking more in terms of special needs, working with children with other educational needs as well. So what we wanted to do was just highlight that this curriculum can be used in any setting. What we're now doing, and that's what part of today is about, is recruiting the next phase of schools. So we are looking at gaining 100 schools. We're sort of well on our way to achieving that for September 2022. And the idea is that the curriculum will continue to roll and grow. And by 2025, we've got an ultimate aim of wanting to be engaged with and working with around half of all primary schools. Now, what we also have is we've just been given the green light to develop the sort of secondary, or it's really Key Stage 3 is the bit that we're focusing on, and translating what we've created for primary, moving that into the Key Stage 3. And there's some really interesting things, I think, about the Key Stage 3 opportunities, where we can translate and carry across the ideas of teaching in a really integrated way. So the idea would be that there would be a big inquiry question that would be taught by a variety of different subject specialists. So you'd have science teachers teaching a science element of it, whilst history teacher would be bringing the history to it, but the students would be exploring the same question across those subjects. So I think there's something really innovative in there with that. Let me just now introduce you to some of the pioneer schools. These are some of the inspiring educators that are involved in the project at the moment. We've got John up in Liverpool, and he works in a school that works with students who have visual impairment. And we've got Tamsin down in Plymouth, Debbie up near Bradford, and then we've got Hannah kind of similarly, kind of Kirklees area. And Hannah is a really inspiring educator working with particularly nursery early years. And when we went and visited, it was just amazing to see her engaging with the young people and seeing how she was bringing elements of the natural world into everything that she was doing. And so we've got video content with all of these that people can watch on our YouTube channel that help tell the story of these people. Now, let's get into the curriculum then. So what we have created is a series of about 30 inquiry questions. And when schools sign up, they get access to these through Google Drive. So at the moment, we're sharing all the resources openly through Google Drive. And also those are kind of commentable. So what we're really keen to do is to gain or continue to gain feedback. So anyone can add comments, add ideas. And that's also in terms of teachers are sharing their resources back with us, and we're helping feed them in as well. So that's all part of the process. But what you can see here is we've framed it around certain key themes, and there's about 7 or 8 of these. At the moment, you can kind of see energy, food, and nature. And then each of those has a key concept, which gives a bit of direction in terms of what that topic is about. And then you can see in the middle here, the inquiry questions. And the idea is those inquiry questions are quite short, sharp, and relatively provocative. And what they ask are really broad societal questions that we're engaging with as a society now. So things like, is the weather changing? Should we all go vegan? What does it take to make a cup of tea? How should we heat our homes? Is carbon a magic ingredient? And so the idea is these are really meant to capture young people's imaginations and kind of help them develop their understanding and explore ideas around this. The other thing I wanted to highlight as well is that the outcomes or the kind of what students are working towards is a really fundamental part of this as well. So as well as thinking about what teachers engage with in terms of the content, we're also really keen to explore how teachers teach. And lots of these activities are designed to nudge teachers to be a little bit more creative and imaginative in the way that they teach, in the style of teaching, in terms of their pedagogy. And often it's also about making better use of outdoor spaces and spending more time outside as well. But also these outcomes are about creating work or creating something, a piece of work that is maybe collaborative in nature, so that young people have worked together to create it, but also it's for a real world audience. So lots of these are about creating maybe a drama performance for the school community as a whole, or maybe creating a piece of persuasive media, or creating a presentation for the local community. So is the weather changing? It's then the young people be having the role of helping to share the knowledge with the whole community around them. It might be also then having a debate, but the idea is it's moving beyond just the teacher as the audience, and instead thinking about everything having some sort of real world kind of audience in that sense. And so what we've created is schemes of learning that frame that, and I'll go into a bit more detail about one of them in a minute. And we've also created a whole series of video content that explains each of the series of lessons. So we're trying to give as much support to teachers as possible. Now, I'm going to go into detail, I think, about, should we all go vegan? And this is actually something that Dale is has a real keen interest in. You might not know, but all of the football players at Forest Green Rovers are vegan when they're at the football club. So they're fed all plant-based diets. Now, in terms of the structure, then, this is the kind of similar for all of the topics. There's the inquiry question at the top, and then in this table it explains the length, the key concept. It explains that sort of outcome on the main assessment. This one is a public speaking competition. It links here, just briefly, it shows some of the highlights in terms of links to the national curriculum, and there's another document that goes into more detail about mapping those, and a lot of that is then useful in terms of kind of external validation, Ofsted, and ensuring that you sort of showing what you're doing. What we've also got is we have embedded literacy in this by linking key texts. So we've picked one or two books that teachers can use either to suggest that the students read during the topic, or they might use elements or bits of it during lessons. But there's a book there that's also linked and suggested. We've got a series of key ideas as well, just to highlight to the teacher what are the fundamental things that are trying to be conveyed. And then you can see here, this is the sort of nature of how each of the topics is each of the lessons is explained. Kind of, there's a little bit of a descriptor and then a link to an external resource. And here we've got a food sort activity that uses some of Twinkle, but it could be one that you use real food in the classroom. And then there's also a video there linking to Forest Green Rovers, which explores veganism, just to introduce before then going into more of the detail lower down. What we've also got is further opportunities. So we're always looking as well. It might be in terms of homework, but just opportunities for students to stretch and engage beyond, outside of the classroom, and activities they can do in other elements of the kind of school time. Now, what we also have done then, so as well as having this resource of lesson plans, all of this curriculum content, we've also tried to reach out a little bit further as well and frame this within more of a journey for the school, to go beyond just the idea that we're sharing resources that have been compiled, but we also want to kind of take schools on a journey themselves. So what we've done is we've broken it down into a 5-part journey. And the first stage is all about consulting the school community. So engaging every single person, from the parents to the governors to the students themselves, finding out what they think about the climate nature emergency and the rest of nature and the environment as a whole, what they think the priorities should be, how confident they feel themselves. And also what we've included at this stage as well is the Nature Connection Index, which is a little survey that you take which measures your connection with the rest of nature. And that's something that we do sporadically at different stages with schools, just to measure the impact of what we're doing. And actually, if I go here, I think this highlights some of the documents, the way that we structure this, and it might be, here is the first one. You can see that's the survey, or some of the surveys that we've linked through. We've got some questions as well for students that are kind of managed by teachers. So the idea is they then with classes can kind of explore some of this in a bit more of a controlled manner, and they can kind of guide the discussion. We've got an introduction that teachers or the head teacher can use to share with teachers and the rest of the school. So there's a bit of a template there in terms of explaining what the project is about and what the school's involvement would include. And then the second step then is then starting to think about the current school curriculum, thinking about how what the Ministry of Ecoeducation provides maps into. So it's almost like thinking about what are the easiest ways to connect and embed. It might be that the school already does some topics which overlap. And so it might just be that we can start to, the school can use some of the resources and include some of the elements as an easy way to begin building confidence around the curriculum. And it may also be that there is a particular teacher that takes the lead on this. There is one year group that is the sort of trial year group, and it's through exploring this over time and teaching different topics that then it grows and expands throughout the school. So there's definitely a flexibility. There's not an expectation that schools are all encompassing and kind of take everything. It's very much a spectrum in that this is at the very least some extra resources that have been curated for schools to use, or it may be that you buy into more of the ethos and that you're keen to engage in more of the other elements as well. And in that second stage as well, part of that is then thinking about opportunities for mapping the school site and also for further staff training. And so what we have in the step 2 folder is we have a list of external organizations that provide training. And what we've actually done is started to curate some of that. So we have helped organize training from some of these providers to help upskill and develop the staff body's knowledge. What we also have is some awards as well. The idea that by engaging in some of the topics and carrying out some of the curriculum, you're actually also building up evidence to achieve other external awards like the Eco Schools or the Plastic Free Schools initiative or some of the RHS gardening ones. That these are embedded within the curriculum and the lessons. And I guess that's also the other key point, is to say that what we're trying to do here as well is to make the school's life easier by, rather than loading more onto schools, we are doing a lot of that work for them and showing how by just simply teaching lessons, which you would do anyway, you can then achieve these other elements. So it's not about putting more pressure onto schools, it's trying to ease some of that pressure by helping to curate a lot of this, the journey and the content. And what then, we then go on to thinking about at step 3, a kind of launch event. We've got some video content of how we've done that with other schools. There's Ludmila, one of the teachers up at Thornton Primary School. She organised this superb day where there was a collapsed timetable. We started with an assembly that we delivered, and then the students throughout the day did different lessons from elements of the curriculum. And then at the end of the day, they brought in all of the parents, and we were in a field outside, and each year group had the opportunity to present and perform and to show what it is they'd learned during the day. And it was a really good way to start off the curriculum and launch it. And we have done similarly in a few other schools, and that's something that we're really keen to help support as well, is to be able to go into schools and help deliver assemblies and workshops, both for students and for staff. And then further down the road, we want schools to continually reflect on the process. So there's opportunities and surveys to think about what is working, what isn't working, and how direction can be shifted. And ultimately at stage 5, what we would be really keen for is for schools to use the database of resources and the framework to create their own schemes of work, to create their own inquiry questions. And then for us to then incorporate those into what's offered to other schools so that we continue to grow this resource, and very much staying true to that element of collaboration and sharing and helping bring this to everyone. I think that was very much where I wanted to get to. I don't know if there were any questions from anyone. If anyone had any questions that they wanted to share, anything I might have missed, maybe.
Thank you, Paul. That was great. I know you've given a really good insight and a really great flavour of what's there, how accessible it is, the stages that you know schools can go through to get started. and build on some of the brilliant things that schools will already be doing. Just to confirm, are there any costs associated?
No, so this is something that's special about this project is there isn't a cost and there never will be. This very much will be funded by charitable trusts. It's also to do with that relationship in the sense that because we are pulling resources that are freely available, kind of we were keen to keep it free, and we want that not to be a barrier. So this will always be funded in a charitable sense and shared. So I guess there isn't a financial expectation, but what we really want from schools is for at least there to be some sort of point of contact, and for schools to commit to some sort of time to engage and develop this as well. So I guess that's the only real commitment from schools.
So do you have a time scale for registration? How are you approaching that?
So the way to commit is to essentially send an email to, it's paul@ministryofeco.org, and that's like an expression of interest that then initiates a Zoom call to then have a one-to-one conversation to think about where are the school at the moment and how can we move forward. So ideally what we're looking for now is schools who want to show a kind of a sense of commitment and for September 2022. And might then over the next few months, next term, to start looking at the resources, start looking at the process. They might initiate a survey with the parents and with the teachers. So they might start some of the process so that maybe in September they can actually start using some of the resources in their planning. But again, we're very flexible. We, over the last few months, have had schools who have come on board and really shown commitment and said, look, we're really keen to use this. And we've been happy for that to happen. So we're very flexible. There's not a sort of cut-off. Happy to work around schools and understand their commitments and everything else that's expected of them.
Brilliant, brilliant. Thank you everyone who you've been great at joining in so far. Can I just ask people kind of what your gut feeling is, if this is something you would like to be, I'm not saying you've got to commit now, but is it something you'd like to be interested in? You'd like to be interested in and to discuss with your senior teams in school, your governing bodies. It would just be great to have some feedback to say really whether it feels doable. I think is probably.
Yeah, the other thing I wanted to say, Lucy, as well, sorry, that maybe I didn't emphasize enough, is that we are fully aware that there is a real wealth of resource and organizations who are working in this space and have been for a very long time. And what we're keen to do is come along and help amplify that and help stitch a lot of those initiatives together, because I think there's a sense that it can often feel quite overwhelming for schools, and that they can feel like it's almost like a tidal wave of things being offered to them or opportunities. But as a teacher, schools end up often having to just say no because they don't have the brain space to be able to filter it and to kind of work out how it would commit. And what we're trying to do is to almost act as part of that process, so that then we've already done a lot of that thinking time and helped to work out how these things fit together. So, there's some really good initiatives around energy, like the Let's Go Zero campaign. Eco Schools is a superb award that's really nationally recognised. The Plastic Free Schools is another great one. But by kind of engaging with the curriculum and teaching lessons from those organisations, like from Surfers Against Sewage, you then can achieve those awards, and it almost helps streamline that process. So I think what I really wanted to get across is that we're really keen to help amplify all of those organisations and help schools better connect with them all through something that's a bit more streamlined and holistic and kind of cohesive in that sense.
That's brilliant. If there aren't any more questions for Paul at this stage, people might want to contact you directly, Paul, and that's absolutely fine. I've just popped your email, your direct email in there. We'll send that out again to everybody that's registered with a copy of the presentation slides and also a copy of the replay webinar. We are trying to share this message to as many schools as possible. So if you are part of a group or a network, please do forward that email on so people can log in and they can watch the replay webinar, and then they can get in touch with you directly as well. So if anyone has any questions, please do drop them into the chat now. I think if not, if that's everything from you, Paul, we will thank you so much for your time. We're really pleased you were able to join us. And yeah, like I say, when you do receive that information, please do get in touch with Paul if this is something you want to progress, and also please do share it. We will really, we really appreciate that. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.